Hello, we would like to welcome you to the next episode of our podcast, You and I,
Ukrainian New Identity.
This podcast will help you and us to reinvent Ukrainian culture, history, and traditions.
And to see the history through the eyes of ordinary Ukrainians.
We will also highlight differences and similarities between British and Ukrainian cultures.
My name is Maria Kush. I'm a Ukrainian refugee from Sumy.
My name is Zhenya Shkil, and I'm a Ukrainian living in the UK for more than 20 years.
Zhenya, when you hear the Cossack word, what do you imagine?
Well, you see, my father comes from Zaporizhia, and for me, Cossacks and Zaporizhska Sich are very much related. So when I think about Cossacks, I remember times when we went to see my family in Zaporizhia. We would always go to the island, Khortytsa. And actually, there used to be Cossacks settling there. And before the war, it was possible to go there and watch a fantastic performance of Cossacks. They would ride horses, make fantastic tricks and stuff like this, yeah. And also quite often they had, after the show, local craftspeople would come with beautiful art and jewelry. And as you can see, I have very traditional Ukrainian jewelry in traditional colors. And my cousin Olga bought it for me as a present the last time we went there with my kids for this fantastic, fascinating show. So I guess that's the image I have in my mind when you say Cossacks.
And what about, history lessons at school? Do you know something?
Well, I did love history, but I don't think my teacher was particularly good. So my recollections are not fantastic. But for me, it's something between, warriors and free spirits.
Yeah, I think it's like a bit of both. So let's hear about this, and we need to go back to 15th century.
In the mid-15th century, Eastern Europe stood between two major powers, the Ottoman Empire and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Constant raids, lack of protection, and political tension led to the emergence of free military communities, the Ukrainian Cossacks. They belonged to neither king nor sultan. They created their own authority. The heart of Cossack strength was Khortytsa, a fortress city on an island in the middle of the Dnipro River. Surrounded by rapids, it was virtually impregnable. Whoever controlled Khortytsa controlled the entire Dnipro route, and therefore trade and military movement across the region. The Zaporizhian Sich had a clear structure, elected leadership, a council of elders, strict laws, and military discipline. But it was more than just an army. It had its own culture, education, archives, and diplomacy. The signatures of the hetmans were refined and complex, proof of a highly educated elite. The Cossack state marked the golden age of Ukrainian history, a time of freedom and self-governance. It was here that one of the world's first constitutions was written, created by Philip Orlik in 1710, long before many European democracies. This was the beginning of Ukrainian statehood.
That was very interesting. It was a fantastic history lesson for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think actually Ukrainians can't imagine Ukraine without Cossacks. We have it everywhere. Even at the medieval time, at the map of Europe, the land of Ukraine was called actually Cossacks' land.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. And if our listeners remember the previous episodes that we produced,
Yeah.
they would know that quite a lot of traditions of everyday life for Ukrainians go back to Cossack times. For example, tea drinking.
Yeah.
You remember it started with Cossacks and brewing different roots and herbs to get themselves strengthened. And also our Ukrainian coat of arms. Yeah, it has this will and will for freedom engraved in it.
Yeah. And do you know, by the way, what means like a translation of the word Cossacks?
No, do you know?
Cossack means free man.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. But actually, just when I'm thinking about Cossacks again, I always see the characters from a cartoon. Do you know which cartoon?
Yes, Cossacki, Ukrainian cartoon. That was my favorite when I was a kid.
Yeah, I loved it, absolutely. And it actually was series of Ukrainian animated comedy shorts created at Kiev Nog Film. And they were called Cossacki, obviously, or Cossacks, or how Cossacks did this and that. There were lots of different episodes. And the series was written and directed by Volodymyr Dakhno. And the first episode was called How the Cossacks Cooked Kulich. And it was produced in 1967. Instantaneously, those characters became very popular. And if you remember, there were 3 Cossacks. They were very different. There was Burmela, Karatun, and Silaj. So one was a little Cossack.
Yeah. One was
And
a
tall and very sort of sly one, and another one was very strong. Yeah.
An interesting fact about this cartoon is that actually it doesn't have any words, so our UK friends can watch them. Yeah, even now.
Exactly.
And we will share the links.
Yes, because those 3 Cossacks go on various adventures. They meet foreigners or people from different countries. They even travel to heaven, and they always come out winners.
Yes, and they even play football.
Yes, they do play football. And I think the story is loosely based on Alexandre Dumas' Three Musketeers, but very loosely. Actually full of Ukrainian nationality, culture, and character. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think it will be cool to make a special episode about Ukrainian animations.
I like the idea. Let's make it. The next one, probably. Why not? Well, as I've described those characters to our listeners and to our audience, I'm just wondering, this very particular hairstyle, does it have any meaning at all? Is it just fashion?
No, is it fashion? No, of course not. We are deep culture nation. We have everything with some meaning behind it. So basically, I know that a lot of even Ukrainians called it oseledets, but this is not actually correct.
Let's translate the word for our listeners. Yes, please. Oseledets means actually herring, the fish, herring.
And I think it's really like a Russian narrative. Basically, this haircut's called chup або chuprina. And I have a really cool interview of real Cossacks. Yurchishin. Yes. So Ukrainian Cossack stunt team by Oleg Yurchishin went to a Royal Well show this summer. It was a pleasure to take an interview with Oleg Yurchishin, and let's see his interview. Hello and welcome. Today we will have a really interesting vlog. Our Ukrainian Cossack stunt team arrived to UK for Royal Welsh show.
І богатирі носили оселедці, чуби. Ну, оселедець, до речі, оселедець це козаки називали жартоман. А справді чуб говорили або там чуприна. Козаки на той час були досить освічені. Багато хто там і латиною володів. І оселедець називали левержет, зачіска лева. Ну, це ще було в часи Київської Русі, бо на Святослав носив зачіску. Чуприна в нього була, як у козаків. І тоді воїни в Київській Русі теж носили подібні зачіски, і це був як статус. Будь-хто там не міг там купець або селянин носити таку зачіску. Просто саме в Запорізькому війську були така назва охочкоємні. Оце були селяни. Вони були ненавчені, погано озброєні. Та ж сама Росія там розповідають історично, що це біглі селяни, які там організовували групи І потім вони там стали там військовими там чи як. Ну, тобто, насправді ні, це завжди були воїни, які захищали кордони. Козаки ще й воювали як найомники, їх наймали різні армії, там і у Франції там воювали, і різних там і з цим Валенштейном німецьким цим. Богданом Хмельницьким теж воювали козацькі підрозділи. І тому штандарти тоді не тільки в козацькій армії, у всіх армій, це от те, що мені реконструктори розповідали, що в ті часи не було єдиної уніформи. Уже там, коли Наполеон був, то вже там єдина форма була. А раніше навіть ті мушкетери, вони теж одягалися в різний одяг. Все залежало від достатку того ж мушкетера, скільки воно було грошей, та він купив собі якийсь одяг. І отак так і ходили. Купив коня, не купив, пішки ходиш. І багато легенд стосовно цієї зачіски. Порушив кодекс честі, одрізали цей, як мінімум, а то і харакірі да, зразу. Да. Тобто свій кодекс був якийсь, ну, звісно, це середньовіччя, там, 15-16 століття. На той час, там, звісно, в цій легенді говориться, що цю зачіску носили козаки, щоб коли в бою загинеш, то щоб тебе на небо янголи було за що тебе піднімати. Навіть якийсь ми фільм знімали в Україні. По-моєму, там от за оселедці янголи. До речі, цей хлопчина, що грав ангела, качок, такий блондин, загинув. Ну, півроку, десь чи рік назад. Теж служив. Війна це, звісно, дуже. Хто б міг подумати, що це нам доведеться на наші. Ну, історія повертається. Я в армію пішов добровільно, але ти майже постійно, навіть коли там відпускають додому, ти постійно на дзвінку. Ти в будь-який момент тебе можуть раз там відпустили, наприклад, там КЗВ не надають короткострокові відпустки там на день, на два. Ти приїжджаєш і тебе, ну, бувало таке, тільки я доїхав додому, вже дзвонять, все, їдь назад, треба їхати. Все. І що ти зробиш?
Я був командиром підрозділу, і мені доводилось дуже часто відправляти хлопців, чого я не дуже хотів робити. Мені краще самому виїхати на бойове завдання, ніж хлопців відправляти, тому що хлопці в мене всі були молоді, і це дуже важко. Насправді дуже важко, але були такі вони завзяті хлопці, вони ніколи не відмовлялися. Я ніколи не заставляв нікого йти, я просто приходив і запитував: хлопці, хто готовий вийти на бойове завдання? Так мені було легше, я думав, так буде легше. Але ліс рук, і доводилось самому вибирати.
У нас вже в Україні всі козаки. Навіть в гімні там співається гімн України, там, що ми всі козацького роду.
Absolutely outstanding, terrific horsemanship, and the skills were phenomenal to see, especially the sword skill, the balancing, the agility of the horses, the gymnastics of the riders. Oh, You can just imagine. I wouldn't want to go into battle with you.
It was fantastic, but just to see how athletic they were and how fit and strong and how fast the horses were. And it's just lovely to be able to support Ukraine through even a cultural festival like this at a time like this.
But the idea of warriors and freedom fighters is not unfamiliar for Britain. Back in the same century, England had its own knights. They fought under banners of red and white in the Wars of the Roses. It was a time of chaos and courage. In 1485, Henry Tudor defeated King Richard III in the Battle of Bosworth and became King Henry VII. That ended the war and began the Tudor Age. The knights were not only fighters, they followed a code: loyalty, honor, and faith. Much like Cossacks, they lived and died for their land and their people.
That's really interesting. Let's find out a little bit more.
Yes, please.
The Wars of the Roses began as a dynastic conflict between two branches of the Plantagenet family, the Lancastrians and the Yorkists, both claiming the English throne. The crisis grew out of England's defeat in the 100 Years' War and the weakness of King Henry VI, whose periods of madness left the country effectively leaderless and sparked a struggle for power. The war is usually dated from the First Battle of St. Albans in 1455, where Richard, Duke of York, defeated the Lancastrian forces. The name Wars of the Roses comes from the emblems of the rival houses, the Red Rose of Lancaster and the White Rose of York. Their rivalry plunged England into decades of shifting loyalties and violent conflict. It all ended in 1485, when Henry, a Lancastrian claimant, defeated Richard III at Bosworth Field. To restore stability, he married Elizabeth of York. By setting aside the names Lancaster and York, they created a new ruling family, the Tudors, whose symbol, the Tudor rose, combined both colours into one. This emblem of unity remains visible throughout modern Britain.
I was lucky enough to meet one really interesting stunt team in UK. Their name is Knights of Middle England, and they have a beautiful, unforgettable shows at Warwick Castle. It's called War Red and White Roses, and it's super interesting because they have like not only a night show where have a jousting and horses and fighting with sword. It's actually, as a theater, have a story behind it, and it's based on real history. And this is a really incredible feeling to watch it. And each single summer they have it, and they make it with new stuff every time. So I watch it 3 summers in a row, and I never have bored after. So I think everybody who have a chance to visit Warwick Castle, definitely not to miss.
But can you watch it any day, every summer?
Every summer, yes, any day. And unfortunately, during the winter time, they close this because I think it's like a horses have to have their own period of resting.
And in England, that knightly spirit also lives on. At Warwick Castle, the Knights of Middle England recreate the great battles of the past and remind us what honor really meant and means. Let's hear from their leader, Carl.
Yay!
In England, we love our tradition, we love our history, we love our knights. A lot of our history is based on that. In school, it's very heavily orientated about medieval knights, and a medieval period in England was a huge part of history in the UK. So I used to love everything about it, about what a knight stood for, riding the horses, but everything that they had to do. They had to be good at poetry, they had to be good at dancing. There were so many other things about being a knight. So yeah, I think for me, it was one of my favorite sort of things as a kid growing up. And then obviously when I was older, I was able to kind of go, right, I might want to do something with this and turn it into theatre. I write shows. I write shows for lots of different things. I'm an actor. I went to drama school in London. I performed in theatre and TV. And we decided to come up with something that they have a connection to, because the Earl of Warwick did feature in a period of history, which is Wars of the Roses. The challenge was that I have 35 minutes to kind of get 35 years into the show. So we had to pick some key characters. Obviously, we can't recreate thousands of fighters, and we had to tell a story. We had to teach people. It was very hard to sit down at first and kind of go, okay, we've got to cover a lot of things here. And yeah, it's been going well. It's 8 years. People love it. The castle love it. We get people come back year on year. So Game of Thrones, the author of Game of Thrones, of all the books, looked at Wars of the Roses, and actually, if you're clever and you read all of them, you'll see it's actually very much based on Wars of the Roses in England. Not anybody could be a knight. You had to have some form of background and some form of higher status, or you had to get approved by someone that was of higher status, or the king or the queen, or if you were a knight and that was your job, so you were paid. You were paid to compete. You were paid to take part in battles. You were able to. So the term actually freelancer. So if you're a freelance journalist or you're a freelance performer, freelance comes from medieval times, and it comes from a freelancer is, as it says, a knight who had a free lance, and the lance is the joust, is the pole that we joust with.
Wow.
So yeah, and it comes from that term. So you would be hired out to different armies by, and you would charge money because you would have all of your armor, you would have all of your weapons, and you would be like a mercenary, if you like, and you would join that, and you would be paid to join and fight with that, and then you would fight with this army and that army, but you would have your lance, you would have your sword, so you were a free lancer, and the lance is obviously the joust pole that we use. So there's so many terms in English now that come from medieval terms. There's so many, like full tilt. There's an expression, they went really fast, they went full tilt the fence that the knights joust past each other. And so you would go full tilt, meant the knights would gallop as long and fast ways. Here's an interesting fact for you. When NASA designed the very first spacesuit, okay, when they looked at the spacesuit to send the man to the moon, and they looked at the gloves, and they looked at where the helmet comes on, and they looked at the spacesuit, how it moves, they actually went back to medieval times and to the 15th and the 16th and the 14th century to look how the armor had been made and how articulate they could move their fingers and how they moved in this big suit of armor. And they looked at the design and they copied. This is NASA. This is, modern day technology, but they still went back and looked at how back then they were making all of this amazing armor. These guys could fight. They could jump on their horse in full suits of armor. There was a code of chivalry that you would need to be expected to follow, a little bit like an army. You join an army, you join a military, you would expect to be professional, kind, fight for the poor, valor, honorable, chivalry, all these kind of things were codes and conduct that you would need to be as a knight. Obviously, there's not the traditional medieval knights anymore. In the medieval sense, no, there's no more knights. But in the modern sense, yes, the knighthoods. So when somebody can get given a status, a title, like maybe a famous sports person like David Beckham. The knighthoods here in the UK that we do, where you get given a status for something that you have done particularly well, whether that's service to television, to charity, to helping with the war. Then there's the historical side. So there still is a group of people. There's the Order of the Garter, which is a group of people that sort of get together with charity. There's the Order of Malta, I think it's called, which is another charity group. There's the codes of chivalry that still exist today. And I think it's those people that follow that mentality and that ethos in their daily lives, so that they still help the poor. They still want to protect the vulnerable people. But I think there's people in everyday life that like to follow those codes of the knight. That's what the knight used to follow. That's what the medieval knight would base his life on. Which country is this from? The first thing I want to say is England, actually. Yeah, I don't think it's as detailed enough for. It's either England or is it a well-known country, or is it an obscure country? Are you trying to catch me out here? I'm going to go with Italy. Oh, English. Ooh. Well, now I want to say the other one's German. It looks French. I said that, didn't I? I thought it's an obscure country. You're trying to catch me out. There you go. Okay, that's really interesting. Okay.
That was really fascinating. Their performances bring history to life. That's very important, and show that even old legends can inspire us today, especially our children.
Yeah, that's true. Cossacks means freedom and will.
Knight means duty and honor. Both traditions share the same heart, protecting people, living with dignity, and standing for what is right. And as long as there are those who carry on those values, heroes will not disappear. Unfortunately, this brings us to the end of our program.
Yeah, so if you like it, please share, comment, and support our channel via donation. All the links below.
Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you. Bye.